Well, what is up, Mission Family? Man, I'm honored to be hanging out tonight. So I'm so excited. So we'll just kind of hang out for a little bit as everybody's kind of jumping on here. So if you want to maybe in the chat put a couple things. So I just want to let you know we have the chat. Jim and I have the chat in front of us. It's a little delayed. It's about a 15 to 20-second delay. So if we're not like laughing, or if we laugh later, then somebody posts it. Like we're not like that bad at humor. We just are also trying to catch up on the feed.
We might be.
We may be that bad at humor, but I mean, honestly, honored that Mission is a part, or the Mission family is a part of your Sunday evening. And the reason that we're doing this is we're wanting to connect as best as possible in this time. We're wanting to communicate as best as possible in this time. So maybe if you can go, okay, it's been a little window. Is there one thing? And I know there's a lot of things we're missing out on, or anything like that. Is there one thing in your world that you can say, I'm grateful for in this season? Like, I know there's a lot of things that we're not grateful for. There's a lot of things we can't do. But is there anything that you could dump into the chat that you could say, hey, here's at least one thing I'm grateful for in this season? So I'm going to cheat on mine because
thanks, man.
Yeah,
that's so nice.
It's
of
Jim
you.
Sheldon. No,
Actually,
I got to watch college football on Saturday, and it's like my favorite thing. It's my favorite sport, and people actually played on Saturday. So that was, I know seems like stupid right now, but for me, it brought a sense of normalcy back to like, oh, I can watch college football, and I love it. So if you want to dump in to the chat, things that you're grateful for, and then we'll kind of take some other things. More family time is something I saw. Amazing friends is something I saw. Jim,
hey, it's been a really good sports day for Chicago fans. My Bears are
for the record,
undefeated
Chicago
and in
is
first
this
place.
city in the Midwest.
Hey, people know where Chicago is.
Okay.
It's one of the last NL teams to win the World Series,
Oh.
without cheating. So Dodger fans know where it's at.
Yeah, they do. They do.
So yeah, the Cubs threw a no-hitter today, and the Bears are in first place. Like,
well, they won a game.
Well, it's not. I'm claiming it while it's true. Like, I'm not going to be able to say it probably again this fall.
That's probably true.
I'm seizing the moment, man.
That's probably true.
Yeah.
Now, so let me read a couple more. So we got a new puppy. So thankful we had all of our kids at our house this weekend. That's amazing. So I'm getting ready to drop off a kid at college. So I'm ready already to have the kids back, and she's not gone yet. It's complicated. Yes, thank you, Jody, that you're grateful for me. I'm grateful for you too. All right, so let me just.
We had a moment.
We did. I think we had a moment there. That doesn't happen very much. I just want to maybe talk a little bit about literally what happened last night in our area, and maybe say a prayer for our first responders. So if you haven't heard, or if you haven't caught up on the news, as best as we can tell, there were two LA sheriffs or LA police officers. I'm not all the way deputies. Okay, that were ambushed by a shooter that we don't know who it is yet. And it looked completely unprovoked and pretty just set up. And so I know that they were in the hospital. I think they're recovering. I don't know the status of everything walking into tonight. But when I watched, as probably many of you did, watch the videos, and man, my heart was just going like, this is ridiculous. Like, our first responders literally put their life on the line for us, and they rush into places that most people are rushing out of, and we love our first responders, and it is a complicated season at best for all of us, but for sure people that are trying to bring law and order to everything. And I just want, I don't know, I mean, you served as a chaplain and VPD, Ventura Police Department, for 8 years, and you know firsthand the stuff that people are walking through.
Yeah, I'd say I've got a lot of friends that are in law enforcement, and man, I think we just daily need to be praying for them and their families. It's in a really hard job right now. I'm grateful for the men and women I know in our community that are on the street doing so much good in our community day in and day out. To have to witness what they witnessed last night, have that thought in the back of their head, man, it just breaks my heart.
Yeah, and I know that our people that are actually living it out, they know full well the stakes every time that they go to work.
Yep.
And I think even for their kids and their spouses to see like the rim of like, this is a real thing that you've got to navigate every time. And so I thought it would be more than appropriate to pray for our first responders tonight, to pray for the families for sure that are literally in the midst of chaos right now and wondering if their loved ones are going to come out or not. So let me just pray for us, and then we'll kind of get going with what we want to get going. God, we are so grateful for you. We're grateful for the men and women that literally put their life on the line for our freedom. We're grateful for the men and women that rush into places that most of us would rush out of. God, we know that there are not perfect people in those positions, but God, you are a perfect God. And God, I specifically pray for the man and the woman that are in the hospital right now and their families and everything that represents, that you would bring so much stinking good out of this horrific situation. I know that's what you do. And I know that's super crazy right now on all areas of life, but that somehow, God, we are just putting it on you that you say you work out everything for good for those of us that trust you and are called according to your purpose. And so we are putting you on the hook for that promise. Because God, we need you to work good and to bring good out of all this. And so, man, just really mindful of the families of first responders in every area, and also mindful of these specific families that are walking through hell right now. And so we know that you have conquered hell. We know that you've conquered death. And so, God, I pray that you work good out of it. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. So what's going to happen if you haven't turned in any questions or anything like that? We're trying as best as we can to make this a free-flowing conversation. So there will be times that I don't see questions. Maybe Jim does see things or vice versa. So our best hope is to communicate. There's no magic sauce that we're delivering. We don't have any presentation to give you. We're really just talking about what Mission is called to, who we are, what we know in this season, what we're excited about, and kind of moving from there. So feel free to kind of ask questions. There may be some hosts in the chat that kind of take you offline and answer some questions because they may know quicker than we can answer. And if we don't get to your questions, like I'll bet you $1 million it's not because we're scared of your questions. It's more we may have missed it or we can't answer it in this time, but we will follow up and have a meeting with you or a call with you, whatever you're most comfortable with in this season. We would love to be able to answer your question, make sure there's no question unturned. Anything you'd add before we get started?
Yeah, I mean, we can maybe just throw in the chat, like it's info@missionventura.com too. If you've got a question and don't feel like asking it in the chat, you can always just email directly and go that route as well.
Yeah. And I just saw,
Thanks, Tommy.
I just saw in the chat about the firefighters. Man, literally our state is on fire. So I have so many friends. My Jody's family is firefighters in Kentucky where we came from. I know firsthand what they put their life on the line. And so that would be in my prayer for first responders. Absolutely. Thank you. You got men and women are heroes that run into places that I'm trying to get out of. And so I guess that makes me not a hero. So that's all right. All right, we'll do that. Man, I thought maybe we would just kind of go back to why we exist as a church. Like we exist as a church to help people find and follow Jesus. And then we weren't prepared as a church to enter into a pandemic. So maybe that's bad.
One of the things in all the stuff we prepared for that we missed.
Yeah, so that may be bad leadership on our part. I don't know what that means, but maybe we weren't prepared for that. And so what we've kind of walked through is like we still feel like we're on the hook for helping people find and follow Jesus in the middle of a pandemic. And we haven't gotten everything right. We're trying to correct communicating clearly. We're trying to correct caring well. Like we're trying to just be as best of leaders, as best of a church that we can be in this moment. And actually the people that are in this conversation right now, this is like the key people that are hands and feet living it out in our community. I'm so proud and honored to be walking next to people like you. And don't take it for granted. I know that we're all actually personally walking through a pandemic, while also being the church in a pandemic, while also having like roles to play or jobs to do or things to do. That's all complicated right now. And so super proud of the way that you're engaging, the way that Mission has been really impactful and influential in this season. And so thank you for doing that. We talked about the vision of our church. We're still going to help people find and follow Jesus. We're still going to pray for our ones. We're still trying to reach people. In fact, I know a lady that's a part of our core that she has her alarm set at 1 p.m. to pray for people every day, and it takes her too long because she has 28 ones.
Oh.
I heard that, and I was like, well, she's a better person.
Yeah, the competitive side of me is going to up the game now.
No, and she's going like, I have 28 ones. And they're like people that don't believe anything that I believe, and they're like, I'm like, that's amazing that a lady,
incredible.
So it's like, it's been inspiring to hear people that are praying for the ones. I've got ones that I'm praying for, and so keep going with that. We wanted to create a new Sunday plan, so we created the 9 and 10:30 option as where we can engage on this platform, the Mission Church Online platform, and then we made the mission service on demand, for lack of a better term.
It's not in quotes, it's actually on demand. Yeah.
Okay, well, I don't know. I'm just like air quotes.
You're
At 11,
showing how old you are.
at 11 on Facebook, it's like a video that puts on our Facebook page, and it's also on our YouTube page. So
Are you
can
explaining Facebook right now?
Well, some people need to know. So it's not a service on our Facebook page. It's not a Facebook Live event. Okay. It's a video that is, yeah.
We're old, man.
Yeah, we're old.
Yeah.
Oh, shoot. So create a new Sunday plan. We wanted to keep praying for our ones. We wanted to keep reaching people. And we wanted to make sure that our kids and students were engaged in our communities that we're offering. And so if your students or your kids haven't received a Church at Home kit, literally our Mission Kids team has killed it with our Church at Home kits. And on the online platforms in the morning, if you have an early childhood kid, if you get on at 8:30, there's Mission Kids content before you could watch church at 9. And if you have an elementary kid, we're assuming they sleep a little longer. If not, it'll come at some point. I love you. But after that, after the later service, the 10:30 service, there's a 30-minute elementary programming that is going on. So Mission Kids has been incredible. And Mission Students just started over this last week or so, where they gathered at one of the parks in town, and it was incredible. I dropped off my daughters, and there was like kids everywhere, responsibly social distance at Arroyo Verde and Ventura. It was incredible. So make sure that they stay engaged that way. All the ministries are really going after it to try and help people find and follow Jesus. So the last thing, before I'll give it to the person who really will help us feel confident about things, is Jim. But this Sunday is our 9th birthday. We turned 9 as a church, and I am stoked. We're going to be at the Fairgrounds on September 20th. It's at 10 and noon. You need a ticket, so help your friends. Invite everyone. In fact, if you're a part of this conversation, I hope that you've already invited your ones, or you've already made it, for lack of a better term, idiot-proof. Can I say that?
Sure, you can say it.
I think I just did it. That you've made it idiot-proof for your friends to be able to come after following Jesus, to come after inviting them to be able to experience a message of hope at Mission. People are looking for stuff to do. So Sunday morning, there's not a lot of competition at 10 or noon. So invite them to experience the Fairgrounds. It's our 9th birthday. It's going to be a lot of fun. So with that, we're going after a lot of things in that. So let me give you, maybe talk about the Leadership Academy that a lot of us have just jumped in and maybe you're hearing about for the first time. So you can talk about that.
And maybe just, I'll go back to some just quick context, because I think, man, just even we started tonight talking about what happened in LA and the state being on fire. Like, we're a hot mess right now. Yes. Like, it's just a reminder of, how important the gospel is in this season, because it really is the only solution I know to offer in the midst of this chaos. Right. And to go back to the Great Commission, Matthew 28, like that's why like we still have deep conviction that we're not off the hook for that. Yeah. That's the only thing that's going to bring hope in this season is a relationship with Jesus.
Literally the most polarizing, and I'm 43, so I'm not young and I'm not old. I'm somewhere in the...
It's called a midlife crisis.
Yeah, disrespected middle somewhere. But like it's the most polarized I've ever seen the world. And I'm like, man, the only thing that brings hope into the middle of that is not philosophy, it's not even it's Jesus. And that's the hope that we cling to, and that we're not perfect, but man, we're trying to lift up Jesus as best as we can in this. So.
And when we started going through the process of planting Mission, we went through an assessment, and they said, one of the things they said in the assessment that I think just rings in my head a lot is they told us, they're like, under pressure, cracks will become canyons. And man, our whole community's under a ton of pressure right now, and we're watching cracks just develop into canyons. And what matters most in this season, I think, is our character. Like, is our faith producing the type of person that looks like Jesus in this season? Because ultimately, that's the most attractive thing that can be seen right now, is a life that looks like Jesus. So when I think about the stuff we're doing this fall, that's why we're doing these things.
So let me even maybe jump into that. Like, if you... we're not naming any names on the chat here in a second, but if you want to put like maybe a praying hands is what we've done today. So if you have, do you know how to do an emoji? So an emoji kit. No, I'm kidding. But if you want to get your praying hands emoji, if you can agree to this, that you have friends that have either relapsed into behaviors that they were coming out of, if you have friends that their relationship has begun to struggle, if you have friends that their occupation has struggled, if you have friends that their kids are struggling, if you have friends, like I'm trying to think of all the ways spiritually are struggling, that they were doing great and then COVID hit and then there's been some retreat back into some old patterns. If you would just say, like, don't name any names, that's inappropriate, but and it may be you, then that's okay. And if that's you, please reach out and say, somebody talk to me. But maybe if you could just put prayer hands out as a symbol of the people that you know or you are in your world that have got struggles going on for real right now in their world. And then this is what compels us to be like, we got to be about the Great Commission of helping people.
Yeah, and so all of these initiatives that we're doing this fall are really about everything we just said. So the Leadership Academy, by the way, has like almost 70 people signed up for it, which is incredible because it's like a 12-week commitment, and I've seen the content that they're going to be kind of walking through, and it's fantastic. And what I said even in the announcement today was, I mean, in this season more than ever, our character, like who we are as a leader, matters more than ever. And we have so many leaders in our church that are navigating so many complex things at home, where they work, out in our community. And we want to help support and equip leaders in our church to thrive in our community in a way that produces fruit, right? That so much of secular leadership is about results, and right or wrong, like results lead us to some self-serving things, at least it did for me, where like Christian leadership, spiritual leadership is about fruit, which really is a production of like what's coming from inside.
So so sometimes fruit, and we didn't prep any of this, but sometimes people think the fruit is the stuff I get accomplished.
Oh yeah.
But we don't believe that.
No, because it goes back to results of like in the secular world.
The fruit isn't the results.
Right, all of our effort goes to achieving things, getting a position, getting credit, and then leadership is about being right, making the right decisions in order to be more productive or produce results, where spiritual leadership is really ultimately about humility and coming under Jesus' authority and living a type of life that produces fruit, which is ultimately for the benefit of others. So the Leadership Academy is going to be, I think, an amazing process of helping us as leaders really develop that kind of character and self-awareness to be the type of leaders that exist for the benefit of others. So get in the Leadership Academy. It's going to be an incredible 12 weeks. And I think they've said in the chat, and they've mentioned, like, you can do both at the same time. Like, jump into all these things. If you have the margin to do it, they're going to be incredible.
Yeah, and so Leadership Academy, we would say, no matter, like in this family meeting for sure, wherever God has placed you, I just want to like maybe scare you a little bit. He's given you influence, and that means you're a leader. So you have been given in a position or a gift of leadership that you are responsible for, and you don't need to feel fear around it. It's excitement. And so when you're placed in a position of influence, lean in and like you're God's ambassador, as if he was making his appeal through you. So man, be the best leader in whatever avenue if you're a stay-at-home mom, be the best stinking stay-at-home mom you could possibly be. Because I think who you raise may be the most influential thing you ever do in your life. So be great at it. If you are a CEO of some Fortune 500 company, man, be the best Christian CEO with God principles in that, and you can get better at it and be great at it. If you're somewhere, whatever you think the middle of that is, because I don't think those are opposite, but if you're somewhere, wherever God has placed you, man, we can all get better, and we don't need to feel the fear of it. So lean in on the Leadership Academy. Basically what I think we're doing is we're going to dump out our cup as a church. So this is as best we got as what spiritual leadership looks like, and where you live, work, and play in every sector of life. Because I actually don't think that being a pastor is more holy than being a business person. I don't think being a pastor is being more holy than being a stay-at-home mom at all. I actually think whatever we've been called to is holy work, and my work is not more holy than your work because I'm a pastor. So that's what I've been navigating.
Yeah, 100%. So Leadership Academy is going to be amazing. And then we have the Change Workshop coming up, and there's, I think, over 270 people signed up for that. And it's, gosh, we have recorded the first 2 sessions, and it is it's some deep stuff that's super, super helpful. And so I'm really pumped about this 6-week journey of getting some real tools that will help, myself included, people that are willing to change, don't feel able to change though, being equipped with a real process to help us get unstuck or experience long-lasting freedom and change in our lives.
Well, like for real, we had like 3 panelists and I was one, and I was sitting up here like, I want to be the best version of me. I want to change. And so I sat with the guy who's leading the workshop, incredible. And I'm like, I'm also like a pastor of our church. I don't know if you know that or not, but I am every now and then. And I'm going like, whoa. Did you hear what he just said? Because that's gold right there. And so like I'm going through this. I went through this process in front of you. I'm probably going to go through this process with you in some of these change group workshops. And so I just want to make sure like that no one misses it.
Hey, well, and I mean, not to out you completely. I mean, like, because this is for real. So like we're recording this on the platform here, and it's not the warmest environment to have like a really vulnerable conversation.
Yeah, that's
right?
true. That's true.
So it's not like we're just sitting in an office or a living room somewhere. Yeah. You may have gotten a little emotional. I don't know that we're going to show it, but just like to the point of like going through it, of like,
if you really want to get well, if you really are stuck in some hurts or habits or hangups, and you frustrated by that and you can't seem to get things right that you want to get right, I'm telling you, this workshop will help you. And I couldn't recommend it enough.
Yep. So we got Leadership Academy Change Workshop, and then we even mentioned last time the chaplain thing. We're not even talking about that yet. The Chaplain Academy, like that's going to be coming up mid-October, so we'll be talking about that in a couple of weeks. And then we have something that we're going to try. This may fail miserably, or I guess fail fantastically. I mean, it doesn't always have to be miserable failure.
Fail going forward.
It can be a hopeful failure, I guess. And that is a realization that we had of like, there are so many things that we can do in the midst of COVID. We tend to just focus on all the things we can't do, right? So just a real example of like, I have a men's group, and the men's group I'm in realized like, oh, you know what's allowed right now? You can charter a fishing boat. So the men's group I'm in chartered a fishing boat, and we went fishing because that's allowed. And we're like, those are some of the creative ways that we want to start thinking of, like, in this season where so many of us are isolated, there are a ton of things that we absolutely can do and are permitted.
Get creative. Please get creative on how we can be the church in where we live.
Yeah, and stay connected. And so we're going to like try to create some affinity-based activity groups. And we're going to do that through a tool called Slack. It's just a communication tool. It's nothing too fancy. Don't get hung up on what that is. We'll post the link there in the comments. But here's what we're basically going to do. We're going to try to give all of us an opportunity, if we want to connect with other people that have common interests, to be able to connect. So like we can go surf. Surfing's allowed. So if I want to let people from Mission know, and I want to connect with some other people from Mission, I can let them know I'm going to go surf at C Street, 10 o'clock, and I'm going to hang out in this parking lot and meet. And like this may fail miserably, but like we're going to give it a shot to go like, there's plenty of activities in our community, from hiking, biking, like beach days, surfing, all things that we can do. And what we're hearing is people at Mission, some people are feeling like, I'm just isolated and missing.
And not knowing where I can
And not knowing where to go. Yeah. And some people aren't comfortable having people over in their homes. And so that might be in a group where they're not meeting physically. And so this may be an opportunity to bring some connection that way. So check that out.
All right, I do want to you didn't know this was coming. So you go on the fishing boat. So appropriately, like without outing anybody or their story in a negative way, like the story of like how God encouraged you, like so, walking into the boat.
So we show up for this, like we chartered a fishing boat, and we show up, it's like 3:30 in the morning, and we're doing what you do, and you're handing stuff over the rail to the deckhand. And I look up, and the deckhand has Hope for Everyone t-shirt on. And so I'm like, I got to make sure it wasn't a thrift store buy. So I got to ask. I'm not that anyone would ever put their Hope for Everyone shirt in a thrift store, but I've seen our coffee mugs there. So we get on the boat, and I ask him, I'm like, so tell me about where you got that t-shirt. And the guy looks at me, he's like, oh man, I got baptized at my church about 1.5 years ago, and they gave me this shirt. And I look at the guy, I was like, are you serious? He goes, yeah. I'm like, this whole boat, all of these guys are from Mission Church, and I'm one of the pastors at Mission. And he steps back, and he's like, take your mask off. I'm not going to say whether I did or not. And he just immediately was like, you baptized me, oh my gosh. And it was like this moment, honestly, like where this guy, he's like, I've been clean and sober since then. I got my kids back. And for the next 12 hours, he's on a boat with a bunch of guys from Mission, like that are just sharing stories with him. So those were like, that's like manna from heaven a little bit in this season.
Yeah.
Just like, oh
to
yeah.
just remind us, like, God is working and on the move and has not bailed on us. And like, it's been pretty cool. And one of the things that we're going to do, and we're really excited even to bring a few more details to tonight, is that we're going to have a baptism service on our campus. So
Yep.
maybe talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, you can drive by on a moped and we'll hose you off right when I'm kidding. Wait, we're having some creative ideas. Dunk tank, throw a baseball.
There's no bad ideas.
Exactly, there's no bad ideas. Just come up with ideas. But what we are going to do, September 30th, this is even going to be news to our staff that we have a date. So nothing
Staff,
like,
we love you. This is new.
sorry. Again, if we mentioned we're figuring out how to be better communicators, like organizationally, yeah. So we're just telling everybody at the same time. So September 30th, we're going to be doing baptism, and it's going to be in our parking lot, and we're figuring out all the details still. But mark your calendars. September 30th is going to be a baptism experience here on campus, and I'm pumped about being able to do the thing that really represents why we exist as a church, which is to help people find and follow Jesus.
Yeah, so maybe it would be good, like last time we talked about, we were never committed to like not gathering before the new year. We were just trying to make sure that we weren't so tied to gathering that we missed opportunity like the care and leadership academies or change workshops or whatever. And so maybe we'll just talk about what we're processing about even the parking lot and maybe some changes we're making to it to try and figure out and try like the baptism thing or a worship night or a thing like that. So
so I mean we're going to be changes coming to the parking lot to make sure that it can like accommodate what we want to try to do outside. We're really leading Mission through like 3 to 6 week windows right now with, I would say, a 6-month vision. So like the vision goes back to, man, what if we could equip people to lead and care where they work, live, and play? And then what are our supporting strategies? What are the things that we're going to do to help accomplish that? And we're evaluating those in 3 to 6 week windows. So we have Fairgrounds next Sunday, and then between then and the beginning of October, we're going to be spending some time like looking back and going, all right, how did the last 3 to 6 weeks go? Is it effective? Is it accomplishing what we want to? And then we're going to make changes and adjustments to continue to move towards that vision that we're laying out for the next 6 months. So I think one of the things we're trying to figure out is how to increase gatherings as we go into this season. That's why we've seen students doing like their small groups. That's why we're even toying around with the Slack idea of connecting people, and then going to give like we use internal language called firing bullets instead of cannonballs. I don't know why I've opened a whole can of worms by saying that, but it's this idea of like you can aim small with some small resources, and if it misses,
it's a little bit cheaper.
Okay. So like the baptism feels like let's take a shot, let's see how that works in our parking lot. We got a lot to learn from doing an event like that,
right.
And then we're going to evaluate that and keep kind of taking steps towards that. So I don't know if that's...
No, that's good. That's perfect. I think I've been asked this question, and I think it in a good way from a lot of core people, just because we don't talk a lot about church finances, or so I think out of good, like how are we doing, like our they're trying to like they're fully vested, fully generous, and there's like honestly we've had new givers every week at Mission. It's so inspiring to me, and a lot of our core have increased generosity in this window. It's been inspiring to me. So maybe even talk through, I think it'd be helpful. This is family, so maybe talk through like some of that would be helpful.
Yeah, so I'll try to give the short answer here, but I think basically giving's at about 80% of what we were anticipating giving to be for this year.
And like for you, is that like fear? Is that like what does that do to you emotionally?
Oh, I try not to carry the emotion of our finances.
That's why too.
Seems like a terrible way to live my life. So the non-emotional response is like some of the things that allow me to say like I think we're in a good financial position in light of even where we're at. Like 80%, by the way, I think is fantastic given what's going on in our economy and what so many people in our church are experiencing, like with their businesses not open. And at the same time, here's some of the things that helped kind of like stabilize mission at the very early onset of the pandemic. So two things. We applied for and received the PPP loan. So that allowed us to be able to navigate this season without having to make cuts or anything like that. And then second, our bank, CDF, Church Development Fund, right at the beginning reached out and to all the churches. They only work with churches. They are very kingdom-minded. This is who they serve.
It's super inspiring.
Yeah, it's an incredible organization. They called and said, hey, we want to make sure that your mortgage that doesn't become the thing that keeps you from doing ministry. So they adjusted our mortgage for 6 months to create some margin for us, which was fantastic. And CDF too, by the way, just a little quick sidebar. I actually had someone after the last family meeting ask. They're like, "Hey, I've got some resources that I'd like to do something with them. I'm going to need to use them in the future, so I'm not necessarily looking to make a gift. But if there's a way for me to put these resources in God's kingdom so that they're being used, man, I'd love to know a way to do that." And so that's why I started talking about CDF, Church Development Fund. They loan money to churches from people that invest in the organization, right? So they're basically loaning off of deposits made by other believers. So it's a really cool concept. So if you're looking for ways in this season of man, where could I put my money to work in a way that would bless God's kingdom? Church Development Fund, CDF, is a great opportunity way to do that. So that's our bank. They were super helpful in helping us navigate this season. And then, like you said, just I've been inspired by the people of Mission and their generosity, stepping in to give for the first time, really stepping out in faith to increase giving in this season. So that's kind of where we're at.
Oh, that's awesome. I may have missed some questions, so if you're hosting or here and you could help me with the question that I may have missed, or we can kind of keep going and chatting. I want to make sure I get everything that I could. So anything that we need to hit. Have you seen anything that we need to hit on here?
Mostly comments about you, making fun of
That's
hash
pretty
brown
standard.
instead of.
All right, pretty standard. All right, so let me just pull it back a little bit of who we want to be and what we're called to. And I love our church. I am pumped for the way that God is moving. I think in this season where we can't see each other in the lobby, man, that's been the hardest thing for me, because we don't have a green room where our staff can go hide. And not that that's bad from other places, it's just not us.
It's a value for us.
It's a value
that
for us.
We're out in the lobby hanging out.
And so I think the hardest thing in this window has been we don't get to connect relationally and see each other and know there's that moment when you're connecting with someone when you know if things are really good or not. Or you let your guard down or not, or you go, something's off or everything's good. And you just kind of know. And our church, we just miss that. I miss it. And so I think in the gap of that, there's times that relational things can be weird, or there's stories that can be written, or I've even seen people at the Fairgrounds last time we did it that I haven't physically seen in months. And I'm it's I miss it. And are you okay? And so I just want to make sure that us as a church, if there's things going on, if there's needs that we have, or if there's any frustration, or if there's any physical needs, or if there's any emotional needs or spiritual needs that are going on, that us as family and as core family of Mission, that we're not just taking care of our own, but we're looking for where can we be people of peace, people of help, the church to our community. And they don't have to go to Mission. I don't care about that. They don't have to be believers in Jesus. I don't care. I do care about that. But not whether or not we can help them and be people that can move towards our neighbors and our teammates and our friends and our church family to say, man, I know you're going through it and you don't have to go through it alone. And so, man, keep praying. I think this season has turned us so inward, sometimes rightfully so, because we have to protect ours that are closest to us. But man, the church is never meant to be inward. It's always meant to be in these moments like this. How do we shine bright through the fog of COVID? How are we the city on the hill, or the light on the hill, the lamp on the hill? And that's what we want to be in this season. And I want you know that God has placed you right where you are for such a time as this. And he's placed me right where I am for such a time as this. And he's placed your kids right where they are for such a time as this. So don't get so tunnel vision on ours that we miss the opportunity where God has placed us and how he'd want to uniquely use us for his good and his kingdom. And I'm not trying to church that up. I'm just saying that God has a plan for you, and he's put you right next to the people that you live next to for a purpose. And so how could you be the church to your neighbors? How could you be the church to your workplace? How could you be the church to your kids' friends' parents? How could you be the church as best you can to the teams that you're on? Like whatever way you want to figure it out, God has uniquely placed you there. And I want to make sure that you know that. So if you are praying for mission in any way, I wish that you'd pray for wisdom. Like anytime that you're thinking through mission, or if that means me in your mind, mission is way bigger than me. But if you're thinking through, like, well, how can I pray for my church? I would just say wisdom is 100% what we'd answer to yes every time, because we are not perfect people. We do not have everything figured out. We have access to the same Holy Spirit that you have access to. And we're just trying to be the best representative of his kingdom to our community that we could possibly be. And I'm begging for all of us to be on that journey together. So that's what we're in as a family. And I don't know, anything that you'd say?
Just that, man, I personally, I feel like anticipation for the first time in a while of like all of these initiatives that we've been working on behind the scenes for the last 6 weeks roll out and getting to try something like baptism. It just feels like, man, we're like on the cusp of like breaking loose, if that makes sense. Of like, I'm just pumped for the things that are coming up over the next couple of weeks. And as we head into the fall, I'm really hopeful for what that means for our community, even as so many of us just lean into Leadership Academy and Change Workshop and the chaplains thing. I really do feel like a sense of anticipation for what God's going to do in and through all of those things.
Yeah, me too. So last thing I would say is like, let's be the most humble people in this season that have ever existed. Like, we don't have all the answers. We don't know all the ways to move forward. We can't figure out the government on our own. We can't figure out the science on our own. We don't know the policies on our own. We don't have, let's just be the most humble people that we can going forward. And then relationally realize that there's going to be times that what we expect from someone and what we experience with someone, there's a gap. I don't know if you've been there in your marriage or parenting or neighboring or teaming or whatever you've been, but there's the expectation, and then there's the experience that we got. And maybe you felt that way with mission, or maybe you felt that way. I'm trying to just, like, this happens all across the board. But when we have an expectation and then when we have an experience that lacks that, what I'm just asking for us in this season, which I think is going to help us relationally, what I think is actually going to help our hearts spiritually, is that in that gap that we experience, and we all experience a gap, that we would believe the best. Like, we would choose the most generous explanation for that gap that we could possibly imagine. And then, if we can't figure out a generous explanation for that gap, we would go to the person that we expected more of and what we experienced less than of and go, help me understand the gap, because I probably missed it, because I'm humble and know that it's probably not what you meant. It's probably not what you said. It's probably not what I probably heard it wrong or whatever it is, but help me, because what I expected from you as a company, what I expected from you as a friend, what I expected from you as a spouse, what I expected from you as a sibling, what I expected from you as a school, what I expected from you as a church, what I expected from you as a leader, go down the list. So there's no like veiled references here. This is the expectation I had, and then the experience I had, there was a gap, and I'm going to choose the most generous explanation for that gap. And then when I can't figure out the explanation for it, I'm going to go and try to figure out why there's a gap, humbly. And I think if we could be the kind of people in this season that are gentle and humble with the gap, I think it's going to buy us some credibility and relational equity for our future. So
yeah. So there's a comment in the chat that I want to
Sure.
take a second and speak into. So I'm actually just going to say, like, give me a couple minutes to kind of. So Tony asked, he said, like, we need a safe place to talk about race. And I'm like, yeah, that's so. For whatever, right or wrong, I thought maybe I'd just share how I've been processing it.
Sure.
In my home, through the lenses of a dad and a husband, maybe. So. And I don't know that I'm doing it right. This is just what I'm doing. So, for those of you that don't know, my wife's mixed. She's half black, half white. Her dad was black.
That means mixed.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. It's just, it's like Facebook. Got to explain it. You wouldn't see her and think that because she's got red hair and fair skin. But she has her dad's black, and she's got 7 brothers and sisters that are black. She's mixed, and then one other sister. And so I've got tons of nieces and nephews. And when we moved to California, all of that family's left in Illinois.
Right.
So in the midst of all that's going on in our society right now, when we went through everything over the last couple of months, for us as a family, as a dad, I was asking the question of, like, how do I lead my family through this conversation? I have a 12-year-old son and an 8-year-old son who don't know their heritage, that had we still been living in Illinois, they would have been fully aware of the diversity of our family. And now being, like, removed from Illinois, they don't see their cousins at the holidays or at birthdays or things like that. So I actually just invited the community I'm in, my small group, invited them to my back patio and said, I just need help processing this as a husband and as a father. And so my safe place was my small group.
Yep.
I just think, again, that reiterates the importance of, like, safe communities where I can be vulnerable and I can trust other people and God with myself. So it starts there, like having a place that I can do that. I'm grateful that I had that place. And then it's a long conversation because it's super complex. And what I mean by complex are the levels that I'm navigating all of this conversation at impersonally, as I'm going. I've got a history in banking and lending, and I'm fully aware of red line communities and some of the discriminatory practices that exist. So I'm, like, peeling all of those layers back, and it's a conversation that needs to happen over time with, like you just talking about, with humility and what can I learn. So I would say, man, I'm just being super vulnerable in these things. So and Dinell, it's my wife's name. If you're watching, I'm sorry if I'm outing stuff that we've talked about. But one of the things that she said in this that's just heartbreaking is the tension that exists around this race conversation.
But so polarized.
When I've never met anybody that would say racism is a good idea. So we all agree this is a terrible thing and that racism has no room in the heart of a believer. We all unflinchingly agree on that. But for whatever reason, for some of us, it's just hard to get to the point of acknowledging that there's a group of people in our culture and society that are hurting. And we should just ask why. And start there. And if we can start there in our conversations with humility as believers, that would just go, there's a segment of our community that's hurting. Let's start by asking why. And then live out James. Be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to become angry. The Holy Spirit begins to do a work in me. And it's the work in me that I'm trying to focus on in this time. I'm not trying to change culture. I think the gospel is the only thing capable of changing culture. I was reading a devotion this last week. Thomas à Kempis said this. I'm probably going to get this, like, butchered. But
Umbrella Grace.
Thank you. The gist of the Thomas à Kempis quote was, I should not be so angry that I can't make others how I want them to be when I can't make myself to be who I want to be.
Oh, that's money.
So there's this, like, exposure of, like, the things that frustrate me about our culture, about all these things. As when I look inward, it's like, yeah, me too. Like, I've got some work to do that the Holy Spirit has to. So I don't know if that's helpful to this conversation or it creates more polarization or more comments, but I would just say, organizationally even, we're going, how do we have this conversation over time? And how do we have this conversation in a way that doesn't create polarization, but actually does the gospel work of helping produce change in individuals' lives?
Well, I think it's not only a race conversation on this part of it, but it's a Christian conversation around, like, we're God's ambassadors, as if he was making his appeal through us. Biblically, that's what we are. And he's given us a ministry, and he's given us the ministry of reconciliation. And so 1,000% that is helping people being reconciled, brought back to God. 1,000% yes. But it's also helping people being reconciled to each other. And so if we're going to end up on the polarizing and turn our backs to people, then we are abdicating our responsibilities as ministers of reconciliation.
Yeah.
And
it's at the heart of leadership. Like we're talking about like what leadership is. It's like that's leadership. I mean, Sherry in the chat there is just talking about how hard it is to bring that up in a small group setting when it's so polarizing, because anytime we talk about race, it's connected to a police issue right now. And I'm grateful that in my small group, I've got, former military, I've got active law enforcement, and we're navigating this conversation, through their lens as well. And like there's got to be a tone of humility and a seeking to understand. And we as the church can lead the way in our culture of how to have these conversations with a gentleness to our ethic, as opposed to an antagonism towards our ethic. We don't want to be right. We actually want to lead people to Jesus. We actually want to create change in hearts and minds and lives more than we want to win an argument.
Yeah, I've yet to see 140 characters change somebody's life. So I'm working on it.
I don't know. Jesus probably had some.
Well, dang it. You would have bring Jesus juked me.
Jesus juke. Yep.
All right. Like, that's great. And this is complex. And so I think we got a question about COVID. If COVID continues, will we do more for regular services and at the fairgrounds instead of just once a month? So
yeah, I think that goes back to our prayer for wisdom. So like to bring you into our process, like we wanted to get a second fairgrounds under the belt. We probably want to try some things in our parking lot. Like over the next 2 to 3 weeks, I feel like we're going to be evaluating and making some decisions for the next 4 to 8 weeks. Everything's on the table in our mind of like fairgrounds, parking lot, like how do we still do the corporate gathering while we're doing all these other things?
It's a great question. That's what we're trying to figure out. So I would say in the next month, 4 to 6 weeks, we're going to do another one of these, and we're going to have way much more clarity on what the actual tactical plan would be on kinds and style and when of gatherings and where. So we miss gathering. I don't know a believer that doesn't. I actually know a lot of believers at Mission that couldn't gather because of some medical stuff right now, and so grateful that we're gathering this way still. So that we miss gathering. We're not abdicating gathering. We're not scared to gather. We're trying to figure out when the wisest time to get us together is and how we can do it. So, yeah. Anything you'd add? Anything?
No, thanks for being here. I'm like, we don't have an agenda for these things. We literally are just trying to create channels of communication and bring you into our process and hear from you. And this has seemed like a good way for us anyway to do this. So even as you mentioned, like we're going to be doing another one. It may be sooner than that, and we may do them shorter.
Sure.
So that
they're not always going to be an hour. So and again, info at Mission Ventura. If there's something that you didn't want to ask or didn't feel would be appropriate, but you still have questions about and not sure where to go or how to get it answered, we really take seriously trying to be open and available to everyone. And I know this is kind of one-sided communication. It's not the way we prefer to do it, but please don't be scared to ask or don't be scared to meet with someone or in any way that you feel comfortable. We'd love to do that. So cool. You want to pray us out?
Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah, let me pray. God, thank you so much, man, for being sovereign. God, I'm just so grateful that in the midst of all of this chaos, you are still in control and not surprised by any of it. And so, God, I pray for each one of us when we experience circumstances that are beyond our control and we walk through painful and confusing times all around our country, that we know that you are still faithful, that you still love us, and that you are the one that is capable of redeeming all of it. And so, God, I pray that us as followers of you, that we would be rooted firmly in that faith and in that belief, that our actions would represent what we believe and that it would be attractive to others. God, would you use our lives to point people to you in this season? I pray that your kingdom, those people that are following you, would be multiplied in this season because of the way that we who are following you choose to navigate really hard things. God, we love you. I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Love you, Mission fam. Much love. Peace.